Imagine the quiet suburbs of Bath Township, Ohio, in the summer of 1978. A young man named Jeffrey Dahmer, just 18 years old, is cruising the backroads in his beat-up car looking for something, or someone, to fill the void that's been gnawing at him for years. He's not the monster the world would come to know yet, but the seeds of something dark and twisted are already taking root deep inside him. That night, he spots a hitchhiker thumbing for a ride. The kid's name is Stephen Hicks, 18 years old, fresh out of high school, just trying to get to a concert with some friends. Dahmer pulls over, flashes a friendly smile, and offers him a lift. What Stephen doesn't know is that this ride will be his last. They drive back to Dahmer's family home, an empty house since his parents are in the midst of a bitter divorce. Dahmer cracks open some beers, and the two of them sit on the living room floor, chatting about nothing and everything. But as the alcohol flows and the night deepens, something snaps in Dahmer. He doesn't want Stephen to leave. He can't bear the thought of being alone again. In a blur of panic and rage, Dahmer grabs a barbell from his weight set and smashes it into Stephen's head. The boy fights back, but Dahmer's stronger, more desperate. He strangles him until the life fades from those young eyes. What happens next is the first glimpse of the horror to come. Dahmer doesn't call the police. Instead, he drags the body to the crawlspace under the house, where he dismembers it with a hacksaw, piece by agonizing piece. He dissolves the remains in acid, scatters the bones in the woods behind the house. For weeks, he keeps Stephen's wallet as a memento, a twisted reminder of the control he finally achieved. Dahmer gets away with it clean, no witnesses, no evidence. But inside, he knows this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to a middle-class family that looked picture-perfect on the outside, but was rotting from within. His father, Lionel, was a chemist, ambitious and often absent, buried in his work. His mother, Joyce, was a teletype machine instructor, but she struggled with severe depression and what would later be diagnosed as borderline personality disorder. During her pregnancy with Jeffrey, Joyce was prescribed heavy tranquilizers, and some speculate that exposure to those drugs in the womb might have altered something in his developing brain. But who knows? Monsters aren't always born. Sometimes they're forged in the fire of a broken home. As a toddler, Jeffrey was a happy kid, curious, affectionate. But by age 4 or 5, things started to change. His parents' constant fighting left him withdrawn, retreating into his own world. He developed a fascination with dead animals, collecting roadkill and dissecting them in the backyard shed, watching with cold curiosity as the bones separated from the flesh. Lionel, trying to bond with his son, once helped him bleach the skeleton of a mole they'd found. It was meant to be a father-son science project, but for Jeffrey it ignited something deeper, a thrill in the mechanics of death, in stripping away the layers to reveal the raw structure beneath. By his teens, Dahmer was an outcast at Revere High School in Ohio, where the family had moved. Tall and lanky with glasses and a bowl haircut, he was mocked as the weird kid. He drank heavily to numb the loneliness, sneaking vodka to school in his jacket pocket. Alcohol became his escape, but it also amplified the darkness. He came out as gay to himself around this time, but in the conservative 1970s Midwest, that identity was another layer of isolation. He fantasized about boys at school, not in the innocent way of a crush, but in a possessive, consuming way. He wanted them to stay with him forever, to never leave. His parents' divorce in 1978 shattered what little stability he had. Joyce took custody of his younger brother David, leaving Jeffrey with Lionel in the family home. That's when Stephen Hicks entered his life and left it in pieces. After the murder, Dahmer enrolled at Ohio State University, but college was a disaster. He flunked out after one semester, drowning in booze and apathy. Lionel, desperate to get him on track, convinced him to join the army in 1979. For a brief moment, military life suited him, the structure, the routine. He trained as a combat medic and was stationed in West Germany, where he indulged in the barracks gay scene, hooking up with fellow soldiers. But the drinking caught up. By 1981, he was discharged for alcoholism. Back home, Dahmer bounced between jobs and his parents' homes, a ghost in his own life. Joyce offered him a room in her place in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, but the tension was unbearable. In 1982, Lionel kicked him out too, and with nowhere else to go, Dahmer turned to his grandmother, Catherine Dahmer, in West Allis, a suburb of Milwaukee. She welcomed him with open arms, giving him the basement to himself. It was a fresh start, or so it seemed. Catherine was kind, religious, oblivious to the storm brewing below her feet. Dahmer found work as a phlebotomist at the Milwaukee Blood Center, drawing blood from donors. The irony wasn't lost on him later. He was literally draining life from people for a living. But the job didn't last. His drinking led to absences, and he was fired in 1985. He bounced to a chocolate factory, then a knitting mill, barely scraping by. Socially, he started frequenting Milwaukee's gay bars, the Ambassador, the 219 Club, where he could blend into the shadows, nursing his drinks and scanning the crowd for vulnerable men. Young, often minorities, sometimes transients or sex workers who wouldn't be missed right away. He was polite, unassuming, offering cash for a night of posing nude for his art photography. It was a lure as old as time, and it worked. For 5 years after Stephen Hicks, Dahmer kept his urges in check, or so he told himself. But the pressure built like steam in a sealed pot. On September 15, 1987, it exploded. At the Ambassador Hotel bar, he met Stephen Chuomi, a 25-year-old bisexual man from Michigan, out for a good time. They shared drinks, laughed, ended up in Dahmer's grandmother's basement. Dahmer drugged Chuomi's beer with sleeping pills he'd crushed, his first experiment with chemicals to subdue. He claimed he blacked out and woke to find Chuomi dead beside him, beaten to a pulp. Panic set in. He couldn't let this one go either. He wrapped the body in sheets, drove it to a remote spot, and pounded it apart with a sledgehammer, dissolving the chunks in acid. Bits of bone he scattered in the woods. Chuomi's family searched for months, placing ads in newspapers, but he vanished without a trace. Emboldened, Dahmer struck again on January 16, 1988. Jamie Dockstader was just 14, a Native American boy from a troubled home, hustling on Milwaukee's streets. Dahmer spotted him outside a gay club, offered $50 to model for photos. Back in the basement, the pattern repeated. Drugged beer, a chokehold when the boy tried to leave, then dismemberment. This time, Dahmer kept a souvenir, the skull boiled clean and painted to look like a tribal artifact. He hid it in his closet, pulling it out at night to stare at it, whispering to it like a lover. But Dahmer wasn't invisible. On September 26, 1988, he made a mistake that almost ended it all. Richard Guerrero, 22, a Mexican-American factory worker and student, was lured from a bar with the usual promise. In the basement, as Guerrero lay unconscious from the drugs, Dahmer couldn't contain himself. He stripped and posed the body, snapping Polaroids. But a noise upstairs, his grandmother stirring, rushed him. He didn't dissolve the remains fast enough. Neighbors complained about the foul smell seeping from the house, like rotting meat mixed with chemicals. Catherine, fed up with his late-night visitors and the stench, confronted him. She had no idea of the horrors, but she demanded he leave. Dahmer moved to a cheap motel, then in May 1990, to the Oxford Apartments on North 25th Street in Milwaukee, a rundown building in a high-crime area, perfect for anonymity. Rent was $300 a month, all utilities included except electricity. It was here, in apartment 213, that Dahmer's killing spree accelerated into full nightmare. Free from his grandmother's prying eyes, he refined his methods, turning his home into a chamber of calculated atrocities. His first kill in the new place was on May 24, 1990. He met Matt Turner, 20, a Native American from Chicago, at a bar. Turner, aspiring model, was flattered by the photo offer. Dahmer spiked his drink with halcyon, a sedative, then strangled him as the drugs took hold. This time, Dahmer didn't rush the aftermath. He had sex with the corpse, photographed every step of the dismemberment, then boiled the head to preserve the skull. The flesh went into black trash bags, dissolved in a barrel of acid in his bedroom. The smell was overpowering, but neighbors just assumed it was spoiled meat from a sloppy tenant. June 1990 brought 2 more victims. First, Jeremiah Weinberger, 25, a blonde Minnesotan in town for a job interview. They met at the Les Boy bar, spent the night talking. Dahmer drugged him, strangled him in the apartment. Again, the ritual, necrophilia photos, boiling the skull. He kept it on a shelf, joining the growing collection. Days later, on June 18, it was Oliver Lacey, 23, a black man and aspiring boxer from Milwaukee. Lacey was muscular, confident. Dahmer was drawn to his strength. Same lure, same fate. But with Lacey, Dahmer crossed a new line. He tasted the bicep, cooked it with pemmican seasoning, and ate it. "I wanted to absorb him," Dahmer later confessed. The skull joined the others, the pace quickened. On July 5, Joseph Bradehoft, 25, a white father of 3 from Minnesota, looking for work. Dahmer met him at the Wisconsin Dells bus stop, promised $50 for photos. Bradehoft's head ended up in the fridge, torso in the acid drum. August 1990, Anthony Tony Hughes, 31, a deaf black man who communicated in sign language. Dahmer encountered him at a mall, used gestures to lure him. Hughes' skull was painted black and gold, displayed like art, September 1990. David Thomas, 23, black, lured from a mall with $50 for posing. Dahmer kept his heart in the freezer, planning to eat it later. October, Curtis Straughter, 17, a black high school student and his mother's pride. Straughter needed bus fare. Dahmer offered a ride and more. His skull was boiled, genitals preserved in formaldehyde. 1991 was Dahmer's bloodiest year. January 18, Ernest Miller, 18, black, a college student with dreams of hairstyling, met at a mall, drugged, strangled. Dahmer ate his jaw muscles, kept the head. March 25, Anthony Sears, 24, a mixed-race aspiring model. They met at the Grand Avenue Mall. Sears was closing up a store. Dahmer wasn't even hunting that night, but the chemistry was instant. Sears' skull joined the altar. May 24, Conrack Synthesomphone, 14, Laotian immigrant, younger brother of the boy Dahmer had molested in 1988, for which he'd served probation. Dahmer spotted him on the street, offered money for photos. Drugged him, but Conrack woke groggy, fought back, and escaped naked onto the street, bleeding from the mouth. Neighbors called 911. Two police officers, John Balserzak and Joseph Gabrish, arrived. Dahmer, calm as ever, explained it was a lover's quarrel, showed them the apartment, carefully hiding the knife and photos. The officers bought it, handcuffed the boy, and handed him back. "You boys take care of what you already got there," one said, laughing. Back inside, Dahmer injected hydrochloric acid into Conrack's brain, attempting a lobotomy to create a zombie, mindless, compliant. It killed him instead. Dahmer dismembered him, kept the skull. June 30, Matt Turner, no, wait, that was earlier. Wait, June 1991, Edward Smith, 28, black, from Cincinnati. Lured from a bar, drugged, killed. His remains dissolved. July 5, Ricky Beeks, 33, met at a bar, same end. July 11, Henry Ellison, 36, black, promised $50. Dahmer injected acid into his veins, boiled the skull. July 15, Stanley Jeff Jones, 30, homeless, lured with beer and money, his head in the fridge. On July 16, 1991, Dahmer met his 17th and final victim, Joseph Bradehoft, 25, the one I mentioned earlier. Wait, no, that was 1990. Let me correct, actually, Bradehoft was July 1991, yes, white, hitchhiking from a job hunt. Dahmer left his body on the bed for 2 days, rotting, before decapitating it. The head went in the fridge next to Conrack's, but fate intervened on July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, 32, a large black man down on his luck, accepted Dahmer's offer of $100 to hang out and pose. In the apartment, Dahmer's mask slipped. He handcuffed Edwards, held a knife to his throat, asked if he'd wear the cuffs for photos. Edwards fought back, punched Dahmer, and bolted into the hall, still cuffed on one wrist. "Help, he's trying to kill me," he screamed. Dahmer chased, but 2 women, Glenda Cleveland and her daughter Sandra Smith, held him back until police arrived. Officers Robert Gabrish, no, wait, different ones this time, Rolf Mueller and Robert Trumbauer. Edwards led them to apartment 213. The smell hit like a wall, decay, chemicals, death. Dahmer tried to bluff, "It's just spoiled food." But Mueller spotted Polaroids on the floor, graphic shots of dismembered bodies, severed heads. Dahmer lunged for a knife. Mueller tackled him. In the bedroom, a locked door. Mueller kicked it open. Inside, a 57-gallon drum bubbling with acid, hands and genitals floating in it. The fridge, 2 severed heads staring out. The closet, an altar of skulls arranged like a shrine, candles flickering. Drawers full of Polaroids documenting every horror. A freezer with a heart. Tools, saws, knives, a power drill for drilling into skulls to inject acid. Dahmer didn't resist long. In interrogation, he confessed everything methodically, without emotion. "I created this horror because I wanted to keep them with me," he said. "I didn't want them to leave." Over 13 years, 17 lives stolen. The victims, mostly young men of color, 11 black, 2 Native American, 2 white, 1 Asian, 1 Latino. Ages 14 to 36. Many from marginalized lives, their disappearances dismissed as runaways or hookups gone wrong. The arrest exploded across Milwaukee. Protests erupted outside the police station. How had they missed this? The Conrack Synthesomphone incident was the breaking point. His family had called the non-emergency line repeatedly, begging for help, but officers returned the boy to his killer. The officers involved were suspended, later fired amid outrage. The NAACP marched, demanding accountability. How could this happen to our children? Rita Isbell, sister of Errol Lindsay, one of Dahmer's victims, screamed in court later, lunging at him as he was led away. Dahmer pleaded guilty but insane in January 1992. His trial was a media circus, broadcast live. Prosecutors painted him as a calculating monster. His defense argued borderline personality disorder, necrophilia, alcoholism. Psychiatrists testified to his childhood trauma, his loneliness, his escalating fantasies. Dahmer took the stand, soft-spoken, remorseful in a detached way. "I knew what I was doing was wrong," he said. "I stopped it because I finally got caught." The jury deliberated 5 hours, sane. On February 17, 1992, Judge Lawrence Graham sentenced him to 15 consecutive life terms, 957 years, plus a 16th later in Ohio for Hicks. "You will never leave this place," the judge said. Dahmer was sent to Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. Prison didn't reform him, it isolated him, kept in protective custody at first, then general population. He converted to Christianity in 1994, baptized by Pastor Roy Ratcliffe. "He's made a simple childlike faith," the pastor said. Dahmer attended Bible studies, read scripture. He even reached out to victims' families with apologies, though most rejected them. But old habits died hard. Molded prison food into fake body parts doused in ketchup, blood, to taunt inmates. On November 28, 1994, just 2 years into his sentence, karma came calling. Assigned to a work detail in the gym with 2 others, Jesse Anderson, a murderer, and Christopher Scarver, a schizophrenic serving life for killing his boss. Guards left them unsupervised. Scarver, who heard voices, confronted Dahmer with a newspaper clipping of his crimes. "You like to eat people?" he asked. Dahmer mumbled something, tried to joke. Scarver snapped, grabbed a 20-pound dumbbell bar and bludgeoned Dahmer's skull, mirroring the first murder. Dahmer died en route to the hospital, 34 years old. Anderson got it next with a metal pipe. Scarver confessed, "God told me to do it." The world exhaled, but the scars remained. Milwaukee burned Dahmer's belongings in a public bonfire, saws, fridge, knives to exorcise the stain. Victims' families fought for compensation, for change. The case exposed biases, police indifference to missing gay men of color. It led to reforms, better training, sensitivity protocols. Books poured out. Ann Schwartz's The Man Who Could Not Kill Enough, Don Davis's The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Documentaries, films. My Friend Dahmer in 2017, Netflix's Monster in 2022, sparking backlash from families re-traumatized by the retellings. Today, apartment 213 is gone, the building demolished in 1992. But the echoes linger. Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't a demon from hell. He was a man, broken, brilliant in his depravity, who chose the abyss. His story warns us. Monsters walk among us, polite and unassuming, until they don't. And for the 17 lives he stole, Stephen Hicks, Stephen Chuomi, Jamie Dockstader, Richard Guerrero, Anthony Sears, Raymond Smith, Edward Smith, Ernest Miller, David Thomas, Curtis Straughter, Errol Lindsay, Anthony Hughes, Conrack Synthesomphone, Matt Turner, Jeremiah Weinberger, Oliver Lacey, Joseph Braidhoft. Their names deserve to be said, remembered not as footnotes in horror, but as sons, brothers, dreamers cut short. In the end, Dahmer got what he feared most, oblivion. No one to keep forever, just a cold slab and a pauper's grave, but the pain he inflicted, that endures, a shadow over Milwaukee, a lesson in the fragility of trust. Sleep tight, folks. The night is full of strangers.